What's up, guys? Welcome in to the 15th episode of the All Love, All Hate Fantasy Football Podcast. We're glad to have you back. Most of your championships ended last week, so we hope that you got a win if you were in those, and we'll let you know later on about how our championship match went down. As always, I'm Jacob Reeder.
I'm Chris Langley.
And I'm Payton Hedrick.
And we're going to get straight to weekly words.
All right, so we are in week 18, but some leagues have 2-week championships to where last week and this week your points will count. That's how one of my leagues is, and I'm still in the championship this week. So this week still does matter to some players currently this year for fantasy, and you may see some guys in these next few weeks with the last week of regular season and the playoffs that will be good insight for next year's fantasy. So I would say don't give up on your fantasy leagues, really, because things are always changing and players are getting, some young guys might get to play this week that their things may be different for them. They may be able to step up and, have a bigger role next year. So I would say don't count the NFL out yet just because your season may be over. But anyway, in recent news, Joe Mixon was added to the COVID-19 list this week. Was it today?
Yeah. I think yesterday.
It was a couple days ago. At the earliest, couple days
So
ago.
he tested positive for COVID. I think we're unsure of whether or not he's vaccinated, but I've heard that he is not vaccinated, and that's why he's already designated as out for Sunday's game. Same team, Joe Burrow said he was going to sit this week. That may be because he's banged up, not necessarily because they clinched the division, but if Joe Mixon's not playing, Joe Burrow's not playing, we may see some other guys sit. You never know.
They also have a bunch of defensive players out on COVID too. So
yeah.
I really don't know if you're playing this week what to expect from Jamar Chase, because one, you're not going to have Joe Burrow in there. Two, I mean, he could play the whole game. He could, because maybe he's got some personal goals set, or he may only catch 2 passes and just sit for the rest of the game and kind of relax. It's really hard to try and figure out a way to treat this week, because some guys can sit a week and come back in the playoffs and, be right on schedule. But some guys need, to be able to play to, stay in a rhythm. So some guys that we may not expect to play will play a whole game. Some guys that, they're already in the playoffs, they might just sit. So you never really know. Baker Mayfield is also out. He has thrown in the towel for the season. He said he's going to go ahead and get shoulder surgery. Kirk Cousins and Antonio Gibson are activated from the COVID list. So if you were planning on starting Jared Patterson, I'd say you can go ahead and drop him again, because Antonio Gibson's going to play, and that officially makes Jared Patterson probably nothing. But again,
if you're in a dynasty league, you might as well keep him for the future, though.
Yeah, maybe so. That's about everything I got for news this week. What about you guys?
Yeah, so one news, I believe it came out today, that Derrick Henry is now designated to return from the IR for the
King
Titans.
Is back.
So I believe he was practicing today. I saw some pictures, at least running around a little bit with a helmet on, so that looks good. Obviously, he probably won't play this week or anything like that, as the Titans are clinched and could easily just get the first.
I think they have to win in order to get the first seed.
If they win, which Deontay Foreman has filled in really nicely, and they haven't really had to change their offense much, even though they don't have the King there to run the rock for him.
And Dontrell Hilliard's also been a good
and Hilliard's been solid too, so it's no rush to bring him back, although obviously you would want the talented Derrick Henry to be there for your playoff push, trying to get to the Super Bowl, which they haven't been. Yeah. They've been good in past couple seasons, but then playoffs they kind of fall off. So it'll be interesting to watch. What I'm looking for in dynasty leagues, I don't necessarily own Derrick Henry, but this is a great piece because we know Derrick Henry's getting older, and everybody's just been saying Jonathan Taylor is the RB1 for next season, no matter what. Everybody's dismissing Christian McCaffrey and Kamara and Cook and all that stuff. And Henry was there even better than Taylor was in the beginning of the season. So this kind of gives us we're not playing fantasy football, but you can watch how Derrick Henry comes back from the injury, how he plays, how they use him, and it should be a precursor to next season so that for redraft next year, you know what you're getting yourself into, and maybe you even decide to pick Derrick Henry over Jonathan Taylor next year. But that's what I'll be watching with Derrick Henry coming back this season in the playoffs and stuff like that. Langley, what do you have about another player that has caused a lot of disruption?
Well, one thing just to add on Henry, I hope he doesn't come back this week because what scared me about him was being overworked. So I just hope they don't rush anything. It's great that he's coming back as early as he is. But, I mean, if they win this week and everything goes as planned for them, they aren't even playing next week. That's 2 weeks he can, that he's healthy, that he's just working out and, like, staying strong and, like, getting back into the swing of things. So I hope they don't play him. But another guy that practiced in full today was Cam Akers. So he practiced in full. So do we see him this week? I really don't know.
I think they came out and said he might be playing. But I agree with you. The Rams are going to be in the playoffs. Don't rush him back that quickly.
Yeah, especially because their starting running back starting the playoffs is going to be Sony Michel. So
which is not a bad.
It's not bad, but it's not who you want, really. Yeah. Losing their first two guys. So, again, for Cam Akers' sake, I hope they let him, sit this week. And, they may get a bye as well. It just depends on, how things go for each team this week. So, hopefully, but in Cam Akers' defense, I think maybe a couple snaps, just to get him the ball in his hands and him get the feel for that probably would help him for the playoffs. But, I would hope he doesn't get an extended amount of use this week, at least.
Yeah, I agree. he has to get reacclimated to the game, and he's definitely going to be – both he and Henry are going to be very, very important pushes for both of these teams. Super Bowl ambitions heading into January. To close out weekly words, yes, there has been another Antonio Brown thing. This, by far, though, is probably the most out of nowhere, just from my point of view. So – for those who are unaware, Antonio Brown during the third quarter of the Bucs matchup versus the New York Jets, he took his uniform off, his pads off, and ran shirtless into the locker room, all the while doing I don't know, it was like jumping jacks or something, or trying to hype up the crowd.
Hyping up the crowd and peace sign in the crowd.
Peace sign, it was just out of nowhere. There was even a tweet that security was planning to rush the field because they thought a fan had gone out. It was only a few after about maybe 10, 15 seconds they realized, oh wait, that's actually a player. That's not a fan. So, just to give a quick run through before I get talking about his dynasty value at this point, because it's very much in question. Allegedly what happened is that Antonio Brown had been dealing with a nagging ankle injury throughout the week heading into the game, and during the game he re-aggravated it, and he eventually told Bruce Arians, the Buccaneers head coach, that he would not be able to return to the game. He didn't feel like he would be good enough, or at least feel healthy enough to be good enough to help the Bucs push a comeback attempt, because by that point they were down by 2 touchdowns against the Jets. They would go on to win that game, by the way. So and the Bucs would go on to make a comeback and win that game. But he said he felt too injured, and he got into a small argument with Bruce Arians. Well, finally Arians told him get out, and that's what he did. After the game, though, Arians said Antonio Brown was done. He was no longer going to be a Buccaneer. His time with Tampa Bay was over. But that's the thing. Today's Wednesday, and Antonio Brown has yet to be cut. He is still officially on the Bucs roster, which is I really don't know how to gauge it. On the one hand, he is still, obviously minus all the drama that's occurring off the field, he's still the best receiver on that team at the moment because they have Mike Evans. They did get Mike Evans back, which is huge. I would say Mike Evans is definitely better than Antonio Brown at this point. But they're without Chris Godwin for the year. Leonard Fournette's still injured. And outside of Rob Gronkowski, you don't really have a lot of big names in that receiving
Gio
room.
Bernard's, I believe, on IR now, too.
Yeah, you don't have a lot of big names on that receiving
their
core.
Starting running back is Lev Bell.
Lev Bell
Yeah,
and Keyshawn Vaughn.
Keyshawn Vaughn.
What about-
didn't Keyshawn Vaughn leave
what
the game early?
Yeah,
But
I
what
think
happened
he's
to
gonna play.
What happened to Ronald Jones?
He's getting an MRI.
Oof.
For,
Yeah.
I
So
don't know. I can look, but
So they may be going into the playoffs having to start.
Keyshawn Vaughn and Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah. So maybe they're hanging on to him because Bruce Arian kind of realizes, hey, we're probably going to need him. I mean,
yeah.
Keyshawn Vaughn, Lev Bell, and Scotty Miller leading the pack out there. I don't know how much you really like their odds at going back to back in Super Bowls this year. But
Although filling in nicely, at least this past weekend, Cyril Grayson, he did pretty good. I mean, former LSU track star turned football player, which is a pretty incredible story, I should say. But yeah, so I want to ask you guys, like, if you had Antonio Brown on your team, I mean, none of us do. I know who does in our league. I mean, what do y'all do in this case? I think personally, I don't see, unless the Bucs absolutely need him, I don't see him returning to the Buccaneers. And quite frankly, I don't think any other team's going to want to deal with this.
Yeah,
We've seen so much over the past couple of years. It's just like, when do you throw in the towel and say it's not worth the drama? I'd say at this point, if you're in a dynasty league, drop him. What about y'all?
I would agree. I probably, if I had him, would have already dropped him. I mean, it's just like, I don't think this incident is what really, got him out of the league. But I think just the combination of the fake COVID vaccination card, this, and some off-the-field shenanigans that he's, still got to deal with. I believe there's still some civil cases out against him that he's going to have to deal with probably after the season. So I just don't see him going anywhere. He's getting older in age. I mean, he is still a great wide receiver, but I think the negatives outweigh the positives. And frankly, if it's a team that he just doesn't want to go to, he probably just won't go. So I think you can move on from him in Dynasty, and obviously redraft leagues, you'll know next year not to pick him. But I think it's time to move on, and maybe he goes and figures some of his shenanigans out off the field.
Yeah. And if it's all mental health stuff, like, we wish the best for him, because you don't, like we said, it was when we were talking about Calvin Ridley earlier in the year when he decided to step away. That's huge on his part, where you're able to acknowledge it and get the help you need. I'm hoping Antonio Brown can do the same, and if he does recover, then hopefully we'll see him back on the field one day, just blasting past corners and defenders, making it to the end zone, showing big plays. What were you saying, Jacob?
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, I probably wouldn't drop him right this second. One, because the season's basically over for your fantasy-wise, so are you really needing to go drop and pick anybody up at the moment? Probably not. So you just hold on to him, see how it plays out this season in the playoffs, whether they bring him back or whatever happens. Unless you really need him for this last week in your championship, then you can drop him. Nobody else is going to be able to use him anyways.
Who knows if he even plays this week?
That's what I'm saying. So they probably won't be able to use him against you. So if you really need it, but I would hold on to him and just kind of wait and see what happens. If you have to drop him for a rookie draft or anything like that, then he's one of the guys that you can get rid of.
We should also mention, like, the Buccaneers, I don't even think they're in the Packers clinch home field advantage. The only thing the Bucs can do is hopefully just move up a couple seeds. So I wouldn't be surprised they even rest their starters this week, because they're playing Carolina, which isn't. I mean, even if they rest their starters, it should be a somewhat relatively easy game for them. So. Yeah, I guess we'll just have to watch and see what happens with this. But I should mention before we move to our next segment, I believe Antonio Brown had re-signed prior to the start of the season a 1-year deal. So he's going to be a free agent at the end of the season. So even if the Bucs keep him, I don't think he stays.
All right.
So I guess we'll see how that goes.
But yeah, that's it for our weekly word segment. We're going to get into a shorter version of Girl Talk, which we also are going to go over different MVP votes and most improved player, and then votes on our own league.
All right, so to begin Girl Talk, congratulations, Mr. Jacob Reeder. You are the winner of this year's Dynasty season. And that makes all three of us former champions of this league. I was a champion of the first season before it officially became a dynasty, and you won the inaugural season, Payton, and this year, Jacob won. So all three of us are champions. Let's go. So just to give a quick recap of the game, and I'm going to throw that game up on screen right now. So this game was pretty close, as you can tell, 94-96. We eventually found out we're going to find out who won by Sunday night, because all of you both of your teams, all of your players played either Sunday at noon or Sunday afternoon. So we found it out pretty quickly. But yeah, so leading the charge for Jacob, surprisingly, the one that scored the most this week, well, I guess unsurprisingly, I just looked at it. It turns out that rounded up. Jonathan Taylor was your leading scorer, like he's been for most weeks. It was 17.9 points, not as much
Which I believe he had like 5 points at the half.
Yeah,
so
he scored a touchdown right before the half started.
Oh,
or ended. That's what I meant.
So it was like barely any points. I was like, oh man, I might have this. I might actually win. And Josh Allen looked really good because he had 2 rushing touchdowns in the first half.
Right.
And I was like, oh, Josh Allen's on pace to score like maybe 40, be a quarterback 1 this week. And Jonathan Taylor looking like he's out of the top 10 for running backs. Like, this is going to be really big. And then second half, Josh Allen proceeds to throw not 1, not 2, but 3 picks. And, I mean, they looked awful. And Jonathan Taylor proceeded to break, I believe, 100 rushing yards. And that was, the end of it for me right there, I believe.
Yeah,
I mean, although it was close and it was a nail biter down to Zach Ertz getting that last catch and really sealing it for him. Shortly before that, Kamara on my side of the ball got a touchdown, which was a pretty big play.
We were alerted by one of our league mates, Reed, who was the first guest on the show. That I don't even know what he said.
He said like that touchdown was huge.
Yeah, something like that.
So, I mean, it really went down to the end because if DeAndre Swift, like I have arguments that if DeAndre Swift would have had more than 4 rushes, it could have gone differently. If Josh Allen would have thrown 1 less pick, it could have gone differently. But also, there were some guys on your team that didn't do as well as even I thought they would do. So,
biggest disappointment of the week, the disappointment on a team on the team not called the disappointments, I should say. Javonte Williams only hit 3.7 points.
Yes.
It was pretty bad.
But opposite of that, Damian Harris dropped 18. So
yeah, but here's the thing: they let Ramondre Stevenson basically run the ball the entire second half.
Well, Damian Harris left the game early.
Yeah, Damian Harris had
re-aggravated, I believe, his hamstring.
Right.
So Ramondre Stevenson went on to put up more points than Damian Harris. So who knows? Second half, Damian Harris could have gotten 2 more touchdowns for all we know.
Yeah. Right. I mean, it did not help that the Patriots were playing Jacksonville.
Yeah,
like with a 50-point lead or 40-point lead.
They won 50-10, and the Jaguars got a touch. Their Jaguars touchdown was the last part of that game, and the person that scored that, believe it or not, was Payton's waiver wire pickup that week. And I would pronounce his name Dar. I don't.
Bawale, I believe.
I guess yeah. No, I guess we'll roll with that.
Which he played pretty well. Pretty well in the absence of James Robinson.
Which he was in my lineup up until about 25 minutes before the game started at noon. I made the decision to take him out and put Mike Williams in, who was recently activated off the COVID list, which I believe if I would have left it the way I had it, which would have put...
Who are you gonna take? Who'd you take off?
I believe
they literally got the exact same amount of points.
I believe I had Mike Williams and Dare and over
Van Jefferson. Yeah, if you would have done that, you would have won.
Which would have made a difference, but I mean, I was just kind of in the mindset like it's the championship. Why would I go away from what I've been doing the last who knows how long since I picked up Van Jefferson?
Right.
I mean, he's been solid points every week.
Right.
And sometimes he scores 18. Sometimes he only scores 8. But I was more on the side like, look, it's going to be points. Who knows what's going to happen in that Jacksonville game. And I think, like, statistically and, like, I think I made a better judgment, like, fantasy football manager-wise. But, you know, sometimes things just don't work out in your favor. And it happens.
I mean, all in all, it was a very close matchup, and
it was definitely the most nerve-wracking I've ever watched a football game. So
was it more nerve-wracking than earlier in the season when we were duking it out and it looked like you were gonna score your highest of the season
probably
and then
did.
beat me, and then I somehow barely edge out a victory, scoring like the second highest score of any team this season.
Yeah, it was tough, but this one I was in my living room running around like in circles.
I left before it started getting like down the wire. I was at your house watching the first like 3/4 of the Saints game. And after I left, I was just getting texts from you saying, "Dude, I'm like pacing around my room. I'm pacing around my room."
Down to the wire. I was watching a game on the TV and then watching like the play cast on here and making sure DeAndre Swift didn't get a carry, but then Zach Ertz got the catch, and it was crazy.
I was actually at a cabin in Mississippi with some of our league mates and friends, and I was pacing around this cabin, and just to like kind of paint a picture of what was going on, is this cabin has like tile floors, and you could just hear me like clicking around on these floors, and just every once in a while going to the mantle, which holds our huge 27-inch flat screen TV, probably from the year 2008, just barely kicking, watching, trying to attempt to stream all these games, bouncing from hotspot to hotspot. I find myself back at the mantle trying to read the fantasy banner that comes down at the bottom because I'm not getting all these updates real time on my phone. It's just like random waves where I would get them. And I'm squinting at the mantle, just trying to read these fantasy banners, pacing around this cabin with all of us constantly trying to, check our fantasy, but whether it's other guys in championships or DraftKings lineups, seeing if they're hitting. And it was a lot of fun. It was very stressful, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. Obviously, I wish I would have won, but it was great fun. It was a great into the season.
You didn't leave empty-handed though. You got your money back and then some for it, and you won last year, so you're already returned back to the championship. So you almost repeated. You were very close.
It was a great game. So now we're gonna get into our league mate vote on different positions, awards, and stuff like that. First is obviously the MVP award. You can see it on the screen between Jonathan Taylor and Cooper Kupp were the obvious front runners, and it was a very close vote. Cooper Kupp was the vote overall.
It was a 6-5 tally, if I remember correctly.
Yep. So Cooper Kupp won the MVP. I voted for Jonathan Taylor as he's my player. Yeah. I don't know who you guys voted for.
I believe I voted for Jonathan Taylor because when I was coming down to this vote and I was thinking MVP, although Cooper Kupp probably hasn't beat on points and made a huge difference on Sean's team, I think the MVP is a guy that elevates a team in a fantasy standpoint. I'm saying an MVP is someone that elevates a team to the next level. And when voting on this, I had thought that Jacob's team was elevated to the next level, and that this guy who is a very young guy, he's in his second season, who really no one really had much insight going into this league. I think that's what valuable means to me from a fantasy standpoint. That's why I voted Jonathan Taylor, but I can see the argument for Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
Because statistically, he just put up more points and was a great player this year.
Yeah, I voted for Jonathan Taylor. My mindset going into it was, here's the thing. We kind of knew what Cooper Kupp was capable of. Like, we knew he was a Pro Bowl caliber receiver. And obviously, no one expected him to break out this season. I think he leads all three of the major receiving stats, receptions, yards, and touchdowns. So I can imagine how important that is to a fantasy team. It was for Sean, who is the wide receiver U. As how you're the RBU, Sean will be the wide receiver U. But Jonathan Taylor last year was a rookie. I want to say he was the third running back picked in last year's draft behind Clyde Edwards-Helaire and DeAndre Swift. I did not expect Jonathan Taylor to be leading the NFL in rushing yards. Granted, Derrick Henry's injury kind of made it a little bit easier, but
a lot easier.
You know who I think is the next person leading rushing yards? Joe Mixon. But you know how much Taylor's leading by?
Like 300.
400 and something yards, maybe 500. It might be over 5. So that's quite a bit. But obviously, both these guys are going to be all pros at the end of the year. Like, they were already voted to the Pro Bowl. They They're going to be first-team All-Pros. Cooper Kupp might break the receiving yards record this week. He's going to probably play because we'll get to it later in the game. The Rams have to win this game if they want to win the division. But it was definitely very close. I mean, obviously, both those guys deserve it. And who knows? Maybe one of these guys could win MVP at the end of the year in the NFL. Anything is very, very possible.
We'll see. Our next award given out is Most Improved Player, which they had a bunch of options this year. A lot of guys just came on out of nowhere or just came out and played so much better than they did last season. Obviously, up on the board. You can see who we nominated, but there was a co-winner, the tie between Deebo Samuel and Leonard Fournette. I have Deebo Samuel, so obviously he was a huge boost for my team. I didn't honestly even think I was going to be starting him coming into the year. I thought he was going to be like a swap in and out flex, so that obviously helped me get to where I needed to be to win the championship. But
yeah,
Leonard Fournette came on and I believe was like the RB4 or something like that.
Yeah,
crazy out of nowhere.
He was or RB4 like on like a fantasy team or RB4 on Tampa Bay.
No, fantasy. I can look, but
yeah, he was not on many people's radars. I mean, because people thought he was going to be splitting touches with Ronald Jones. But I mean, last year in the playoffs, he kind of cemented like his former 4th overall pick status.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean that this year he's a Pro Bowl running back. He had an incredible season. He'll be back for the playoffs. Like, I think he got injured against the Saints, so he's been inactive the past couple weeks, which might have caused some people to have issues if they were heading into the championship week. They had to like search for another running back to fill in first place. But yeah, both of these guys were very deserving. I mean, Deebo Samuel is behind Cooper Kupp. He's the second best receiver in fantasy. Yeah, it was, both of these guys had really great seasons, and hopefully they can keep it up in the next year.
Yeah, Leonard Fournette, number 5 on the season.
Wow.
Yeah.
So.
And I believe I voted for Leonard Fournette in this vote because not to discredit Deebo Samuel at all because he did have a great season, but I believe what made Deebo Samuel have such this jump is not an improvement in his game or anything like that. I think it was just an improvement in volume, really.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw some guys get hurt, and we see him get thrown into the backfield and getting carries and, running wildcats. And so I wouldn't say he's, an improved player. I think it was just if you could go ahead and vote for an improved volume or workload or just like an improved role, like a jump up in offense, that's where he stands. And that's the only reason I voted Leonard Fournette over Deebo Samuel, because I would say Deebo Samuel was definitely second in my opinion, and then following James Conner, which, I mean, just to kind of touch base on James Conner in this sense is like, some could argue that how could you say James Conner improved? He was a starting running back. So the role that James Conner played, I wouldn't say improved, but I mean, look at how many touchdowns he scored this year. I think he scored like 10 or 11 touchdowns.
It might be more, honestly.
Yeah, so I would say he improved in the sense that he wasn't a starting running back going into the season and then proceeded to outscore the starting running back in Arizona, like probably quadrupled the touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, Chase Edmonds was out for a while with injury.
Yes.
And I think the Cardinals already came out and said, well, both of them, believe it or not, are going to be free agents at the end of this year. Connor's contract was a 1-year deal, I think, and Edmonds' rookie contract ends after this year. And the Cardinals have already talked about bringing both of them back and having an RB duo.
I think you got to use them as a 1-2 punch. I mean,
for sure.
Edmonds serves a purpose as being a great receiving back and very athletic player.
Yeah.
And, I mean, James Conner is now being used as not only a little bit on the receiving side once we saw Edmonds, not get as many snaps, but, I mean, he's a great third down back, go get you some yards. Red zone, obviously, they love him. So,
yeah,
I think they got to use both of them if they want to, stay relevant.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Conner definitely had a great year, and this was definitely important for him because, like, he had a pretty bad year last year in Pittsburgh, and we're able to at least see him revitalize it. I mean, I keep saying revitalize when I try to say revive career. He basically somewhat gave an extra revival to his career in Arizona.
All right, so our next one up here is going to be the best waiver wire pickup. There's a few names, not too many. that were great this season because we have such a deep league with Dynasty, but Cordarrelle Patterson was the obvious winner of this one. Nobody saw him doing what he did in Atlanta. It was Mike Davis. Everybody was drafting for Mike Davis, and then Cordarrelle Patterson came out of nowhere. Came out of nowhere and played really well for most of the season. Didn't do as much later in the season fantasy-wise and in the playoffs, but he did help a lot of people get to the playoffs, and that's not what completely matters, but it helps out a lot. I voted for Patterson, I believe. I don't know about you guys, but he seemed like the clear and away most obvious best
I
pick.
might have picked Dawson Knox, honestly.
Yeah, so
Or did you pick Dawson Knox?
I did pick Dawson Knox. I voted against Cordarrelle Patterson. I may be a Dawson Knox stan. Call me what you want. But, see, when I was looking at this one actually took me a while. I had to go back to it because longevity, really. Because Cordarrelle Patterson, from the beginning, I'm sure I said it multiple times on this podcast, but from the beginning, I did not see longevity in Cordarrelle Patterson. And I just did not ever buy into Cordarrelle Patterson. And watching Dawson Knox and watching him run routes, and, you know, Josh Allen's a great quarterback and he can sling the ball for sure. I voted Dawson Knox because I saw him as one of those elite tight ends, and that's just not something you come across every year in fantasy, and there's only a few of them, and if you got one, you know how awesome it is to have a guy that is in a position where they're averaging 5 points a week, and you got a guy that's averaging 15 to 20 to sometimes even 30.
Yeah.
So the fact that he was on the waiver wire and was awarded to a team who just decided to take a chance on a guy, that's what the best waiver pickup is to me.
Yeah.
This is a guy that next year could be top 5 tight end. And,
Sure. I mean, this is very similar to how, at least with me, when in my other Dynasty League, right before this 2019 season started, I picked up Mark Andrews.
Yeah.
And so far, he's been easily the best pickup I've had in the entirety of that league's history. So I agree with you. I can easily see Dawson Knox being like a viable target for Josh Allen for years to come, for sure.
All right, so now we're going to do our own Dynasty League. We're just going to spit them out real fast so that our league managers can see it in the podcast, and just in case you guys are following along all season. I'm going to start with the best manager. Sean Howell really improved his team from last season to this season, which he didn't make the playoffs last year, as me and Amani, we did this year. But he improved. He traded right during the draft for Jamar Chase, Tom Brady, who were perennial starters every single week for him.
Probably the best trade this season by far in our entire league.
So he did really great with that. Traded away Saquon, but eventually got Aaron Jones, had James Conner, who he traded and got last year from me, and that helped him out a lot this year, and had Cooper Kupp. So he just did a great job building his team for this season. Didn't end up getting to the championship, but he did get third place, so congrats to him. But yeah, and we'll go to worst manager.
Yeah, so voted on, like the rest of this, by our managers in our league. Worst manager this year, as voted on by the league, was pretty big. I don't know how many votes that is, but Ashton Stevens won worst manager.
Like 2/3 of the vote.
So, I mean, it's simply because of the fact that he's new to the league. He didn't really make any moves that helped his team.
He was the one that picked Jamar on our draft night, and then that same night traded Jamar away for DK Metcalf.
Which I mean,
it's not the worst.
Looking back on draft night, I could see why he did this, right?
Yeah, it made sense.
DK Metcalf was a veteran. I mean, he's still pretty young, but he's a veteran. You know what you're getting with him. He was set up to have a great season with Russell Wilson, a great quarterback, and you're trading away a guy that you really don't know what to expect with Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. Like, obviously, you have to respect the fact that they played college football together on, you know, the greatest college football team of all time.
Right.
But, you know, you really don't know what to expect. The NFL is a totally different beast, and the fact that they both went off this year and had great seasons is awesome. We love to see it, but you really don't know on draft night. And when you're faced with that trade, I think I could see why he took it.
One good move he did, though, and I'll give him respect for that. Obviously, this was seen as a bad trade before draft night. It was like 3 days since he had been added to the league. It worked out, though, in the end. He traded away Darren Waller, which was, for basically almost nothing. And we...
Well, no, he got the 4th overall.
Well, yeah, but he didn't really... but like the 4th overall pick, I feel like he'd have gotten a little bit more for a dude
Just
who was
looking
the
back
top
on it,
210.
Darren Waller got
Yeah.
Jamar Chase, which he
Right.
traded away, but don't talk about that. Darren Waller for
obviously.
Jamar Chase isn't the most terrible thing
I wasn't
ever.
saying that was a bad trade. I'm just saying, actually, at this point in the season, it seemed like that trade might have worked out because Darren Waller sadly was dealing
Right.
with injuries throughout the season.
Right.
So, not the worst. That's the worst starting season. Number 1 seed, made it to the 3rd place game, lost that game. But 4th place for a rookie manager, pretty good, all things considered.
And pulling back, the best manager, Sean, pulls into the most improved team.
Yeah, he definitely, Sean by far most improved team. Although I'm surprised it wasn't you because you were last place last year, and now you became 1st place.
This was also weeks before the
Right.
playoffs,
Right.
so
Yeah.
people looking on this, I believe Sean was the number 2 seed after just defeating. Who was it that he had defeated? That was a pretty big game. Maybe it was.
Was it the 160
you or
point
Trey
game?
or?
I beat him in the end, so it might have been Trey or something like that.
It,
but
it was probably after a few high scoring weeks, so I could see
Right.
where this
Right.
vote was because it looked like at one point Sean was definitive in the championship. So I could say
That's on me. I forgot that we voted for this weeks ago.
yeah, hindsight is 20/20, but
Right.
I believe as voted on, the Sean Sleepyheads was number 1, most improved. But statistically, championship wise and seeding wise, Jacob was the most improved team.
Yeah.
Going from last to obviously first.
And then we'll get into the biggest faller, which was almost unanimous. One vote was not for.
I got
the
I
Patterson.
got 1 vote. Like, I'll take it.
That's
I prevented
fine,
a
yeah.
unanimous thing, but still, just.
But yeah, Logan's team, Big Patterson's, was looking really great in the beginning of the season with his so-called RBU. Ended up not making the playoffs. It was pretty embarrassing to see. All of us had a great laugh. He was obviously very disappointed.
Missed the playoffs by 1 point. It was literally It was DeAndre Hopkins' last catch before he got put on IR that cemented it. And
At
the
one
only
point-
reason I'm laughing is because it's just no one. We all knew he was a little in over his head, but no one expected him to miss the playoffs.
Right. So at one point, I believe he was like the 2 seed during the season,
Yeah.
and eventually fell to being out of the playoffs. So that was unfortunate for him. He obviously is looking to get back into it next year and make some waves. But last, we're going to do worst trade, which is a little different because it's completely out of everyone else's leagues. But
And I will take the reins on this one because I won this trade. One of the few times I've won this year, believe it or not. So this trade was with, ironically, Sean, the best manager. When he sent me this offer, because I originally was making an offer to get Michael Carter from him before he traded him to Antonio for Aaron Jones. When I saw this, when he gave me this revised offer, I almost thought it was a joke. He gave me an offer of Melvin Gordon and in our Dynasty League, this year's draft's 2nd round pick and 3rd round pick for Khalil Herbert, David Montgomery's backup. Now, granted, David Montgomery was still on IR for a bit during this point, or I don't know.
I think it was like a 1 week.
No, it was like he was out for like 4 or 5 weeks. He was out for quite a bit. That's why I was starting Herbert for a while. But Herbert really hasn't been playing since Montgomery's has come back.
Right.
Meanwhile, Melvin Gordon is a solid RB2 on my team. Hopefully for the long term. He's a free agent after this year, so I'm curious to see if he stays in Denver with the newly minted RB1, I'd say, in Denver, Javonte Williams, or if he tries to find a new gig somewhere else in the NFL. But to close out Girl Talk, we'll give our hot take standings, which we counted up, and I won it. Somehow, I started 0-7. I was all the way in the back, but I finished with a 5-9 record. I mean, granted, 5-9 is pretty bad. I'd be probably maybe a 6th or 7th overall pick in the draft. That would be my teams. But I finished 5-9. Jacob and Payton both tied for 3-11. Y'all got to the championship, but I at least won my championship, which is the hot take championship. So I'll take a W when I can.
Yep. All right, we're going to get straight into our Bourbon Bowl to end this season with some great matchups that look forward to the NFL playoffs. right, we're going to have our Bourbon Bowl. I'm going to go first. So my game is not that interesting, but it's the Colts at the Jaguars in Jacksonville. If the Colts win, they're in to the playoffs. As a wild card, we'll have to see where they exactly get seeded, but they win, they're in. Carson Wentz did end up playing last week, so that was good. They unfortunately lost to the Raiders on a last-second kick, but Jonathan Taylor did rush for over 100 yards, had a touchdown, and that was the first time all season that the Colts lost with Jonathan Taylor rushing for over 100 yards. It was pretty interesting to see, but I just wanted to pick this game so honestly that I could say thank you to Jonathan Taylor for getting me this championship. I really appreciate it, and obviously he's on my dynasty team, so I'll be watching him closely for years to come. But I'm gonna pick the Colts to win and get into the playoffs.
Yeah, this shouldn't even be like a legitimate matchup. Colts should easily win this. Although Colts have not won in Jacksonville for several years, but something to watch out for. Just to mention, I don't know if this will maybe cause some issues for the Colts. Maybe they'll get distracted. I heard Jaguar fans are going to show up to the game in clown costumes. I heard. I don't know if that's legitimate, but apparently there's been a lot of talk of Jaguar fans showing up in clown costumes. Just guess because of how the season's gone and just how
Jaguars have fans.
We'll have to see.
Well,
Maybe
apparently.
Maybe we'll still have some clown jersey swaps after the game. But
Maybe.
We'll have to see. Peyton, who you picking?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go Colts. I think this is a no-brainer, basically.
Yeah.
It's the Jaguars.
If Jaguars win, I'll be shocked. But it's the last week of the season, so anything's possible.
Any given Sunday. All right.
Yeah, for
Langley,
sure.
You got 2 games going on. That's what you got.
Yeah. So we're gonna hop to the NFC real quick. So 6 of the 7 teams are set in the playoffs. Teams are just fine now for seeding, but the 7th seed is still up for grabs. It's between the San Francisco 49ers and my hometown team, the New Orleans Saints. So 49ers are
team.
Yeah, we're all from there.
True. Okay. So my games this week, I have 2 Bourbon Bowls. Don't know if that's breaking the rules. The first matchup is the 49ers versus the Rams. 49ers currently sit as the 7th seed. Win, and they're in. But the Rams, although they're a playoff team, are not resting their starters because they need to win this game, because if they lose and Arizona wins versus Seattle, Arizona wins the division. Which means, and the winner of the division obviously gets a home game to start the wild card round. So, between 49ers and the Rams are about to get Cam Akers back. 49ers might be getting Jimmy Garoppolo's back, although Trey Lance looked pretty good against the Texans last week. I mean, you can make an argument it was the Texans, but it's any given Sunday, like you said. Personally, I want the Rams to win, but I do know the 49ers have beaten the Rams in like the last 5 matchups they've had. 49ers just always seem to have their number. So I'm going to still stick with the Rams, but if the 49ers do win, I wouldn't be surprised. What do y'all think?
Yeah, I think I'm going to pick the 49ers just as an upset and just see how it goes. But it'll be interesting to watch.
Is it because of Debo?
Yeah, Debo's my guy. So.
I thought Jonathan Taylor was your guy.
I got a bunch of guys. Peyton, what you got?
Fair enough.
I actually think the Rams are going to win. They've made tons of moves between the offseason, regular season, and I think they are just now starting to, hit stride. I think this is the beginning of big things for the Rams. So I say the Rams win this one.
All right, what's your other game?
All right, well, the other game is the other team vying for the 7th seed. The Saints need to win, and the Niners need to lose to the Rams for the Saints to make it in. The Saints season has been an absolute whirlwind. Starting off 5-2, then Jameis Winston goes down with torn ACL, losing for the season. The Saints then, after beating the Bucs with Trevor Siemian at quarterback for most of the game, proceed to lose 5 straight. They then get a win versus the Jets, and they shut out the Bucs in Tampa. Then they lose to the Dolphins because pretty much everyone was on the COVID list that week. And then they just won this past week to get within a win of the Niners. They beat them in a tiebreaker, I believe, based on conference record, if I remember correctly. But Saints did play the Falcons earlier this year. They were the first game they lost in that 5 losses in a row skid they were on. Saints are in Atlanta too, so this is no gimme win for sure. Although there are, I think Ryan Ramczyk, their all-pro right tackle, should be coming back. I think he practiced fully today. They should also be getting some guys like Marcus Williams and Aaron McCoy back off COVID list. So this is still a game, but I know the Falcons always love to play spoiler.
Is Mark Ingram going to play?
Probably. I would assume he is because I think he was practicing most of the week and then was inactive last week. So I wouldn't be surprised if he plays this week. But I could be wrong. I'll have to double check that later. But Falcons would like to play spoilers, and if they win, they sweep the Saints this year, which I don't think they've done in a very long time.
So who you got?
Obviously, I'm going with the Saints.
All right.
I mean, who dat?
Who dat? I don't know. We'll see. I'm gonna go Falcons, just to make it interesting.
Okay.
The Saints, I mean, they're up and down. Falcons' offenses look pretty solid recently, so it'll definitely be an interesting game. Kyle Pitts might show out a little bit, and Russell Gage, he's looked okay, so we'll have to see how it happens. But I would have the 49ers getting in. Payton, what you have on that game, and then go straight into your Bourbon Bowl.
The Saints beat the Dirty Birds by 90. It's pretty easy pick. In all seriousness, I think it's very hard for a team, especially in the NFL, to beat another team twice in one season. You know, good teams adapt and overcome. They find those small tendencies, and I think Sean Payton is going to have a great plan going into this game, and I think they end off the regular season with a win. Maybe don't get into the playoffs, but I think they beat the Falcons in Atlanta. And going into my Bourbon Bowl is probably the most exciting game to watch this week.
It got flexed to the Sunday Night Football game.
It's the season finale, basically.
So the very first ever Week 18 in the NFL season finale is Chargers at Raiders. And this is a big game because it is a division game that decides which one of the two gets into the playoffs.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, with all that being said, I think that the Chargers pull off a big win here. And I think Justin Herbert brings the Chargers to victory and brings them into the playoffs. And I think going forward in the playoffs, as long as they stay decently healthy, I think they can make a little run. So, I'm not just picking the Chargers because I have a bet riding on this game that I made in the very beginning of the season saying that the Raiders were not going to make the playoffs because who would have guessed that the Raiders would be in this position?
Yeah.
Especially in a division where, I mean, they have the Chargers, they have the Chiefs, and they have the Broncos, who had a pretty good season, all things considered. So, yeah, I think the Chargers win this one.
Langley, what you got?
Yeah, I honestly, just because, I mean, this year's been all over the place for Las Vegas. I would love to see the Raiders win, but I'm also a Chargers fan as well. I mean, I like Justin Herbert, I like Austin Eckler, and I like how their offense is run, especially because it's Joe Lombardi, the former Saints QB coach. All in all, this is a really good team, but I would love to see the Raiders make it back to the playoffs at the same time. So I'm going to go with Raiders, but I'll be happy with whoever wins, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, close us off, Jacob.
Yeah, I'm going to pick Chargers also, so all of us picking the Chargers. I like J. Herb, and the Chargers are just fun to watch. This should be a very fun game, hopefully a shootout, and it'll be interesting for Sunday Night Football to close it out. Week 18, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I forgot Justin Herbert's also your guy.
He's my guy. I got a bunch of guys. So when you win the championship, you got a bunch of guys. Payton knows from last year. You know from 2 years ago. But, we'll have to wait and see. We appreciate you guys being with us all season. This will be our last regular season show, obviously, of the season. We'll be back next season, hopefully. And we're looking to bring in maybe different shows and more informational shows throughout the offseason and the regular playoffs. So just stay tuned for that. Again, we appreciate you guys tuning in and watching us all season. For the last time of the regular season, I'm your host, Jacob Reeder.
I'm Chris Langley.
And I'm Payton Hedrick.
And we'll see you next time. Peace.